Welcome, everyone. My name is Callie Caldwell. I'm a member of the Inspira Advantage team. I want to welcome you all to our webinar about filling out your AMCAS application, which is starting right around now, pretty soon. We have two fantastic Inspira Advantage consultants with us today, and they're going to walk us through tips and tricks for filling this out, things to make sure you're aware of, a step-by-step guide. And yeah, they're fantastic. All of them introduce themselves in a second. Let's talk about the agenda. So we'll have our panelists introduce themselves today. We'll talk about what the AMCAS application is, talk about the sections it includes. We'll go over some common mistakes that are made when filling it out, tips to make your application stand out, and then we'll open things up for a Q&A. So if you have any questions during this presentation, pop them in the Q&A box and we'll get to those at the end. All right, so we have Callie and Ruchi here with us today. They're both fantastic consultants that work with Inspira Advantage students on building their med school application profiles and filling out their applications. Callie, can you introduce yourself?
Hi there, Hi there, everyone. I'm Callie. I am actually, as of 2 days ago, no longer a Yale medical student because I graduated, and I'll be moving on to residency in psychiatry at Beth Israel.
Awesome. Congratulations. Thanks so much for being here 2 days after you graduated, when you should be celebrating. Ruchi, can you introduce yourself for us?
Hey guys, I'm Ruchi. I'm from Houston. I'm a third-year MD PhD student, interested in immunology and internal medicine.
Great. Thank you both so much for being here. It's very appreciated. So let's dive into our topic. So what exactly is the AMCAS application? Callie, you want to start us off here?
Sure. So the AMCAS application a central portal to be able to apply to admission to MD programs across the country. So it acts as this hub where you can put in all of your information. There's a verification process and ultimately choose to apply to. So this means you only have to fill out, as far as the primaries go, one application for all of the places you apply.
Sounds very much like the Common App for college.
Exactly.
All right. Let's talk about the sections.
So AMCAS has 7 sections that you need to fill out, and you guys might be familiar with this already if you've started your AMCAS application, but there's a background information section where you just provide some background details on yourself, a coursework section where you enter in all your grades and provide transcripts from every school you've attended, a work and activity section where you go into detail about some of the extracurriculars you've been involved in, letters of recommendation. This is also where you choose which medical schools you want to apply to, where you enter in your personal statement, and where you provide your standardized testing scores.
So for background information, steps 1 through 3, it's really expanding upon basic information during the account creation process. So you have your name, your identifiers, you get an ID number, things like that. You fill out your birthday and sex, and then also schools you've attended. And so if you went to multiple high schools, just fill in the one that you graduated from, and then a GED or similar, the state and city where you earned it.
So going along with what Callie just said, for your transcript section, you have to provide information about every post-secondary institution you attended and all of your transcripts from all of these schools. So that also includes if you did dual credit in high school, for example. I also had to enter in my coursework from those programs. And for short-term programs, you can also choose summer school only. For example, if you did some community college coursework over the summer, that's where you would enter that in. And if you have study abroad coursework to enter, there's also a section to do that. So make sure you enter in any degrees that you earned and any majors and minors you have. and make sure that you get transcripts from all of these schools. So that includes, like I mentioned earlier, any dual credit coursework you took, any AP classes you took, you would enter in here too, any transfers from like other colleges you may have attended, and other college prep work is also entered in here.
I'd just like to add too that sometimes getting official transcripts takes a little bit. You don't get it instantly necessarily, so try to do that, well ahead of time and when you actually want to submit the application.
Yeah, that's a great point. The processing time is 15 days for electronic copies and 25 business days for paper versions. So definitely submit those early.
I know some schools also have fees. Did you both find that was the case too for requesting transcripts?
Not personally. But yeah, another thing to keep in mind. And then the next section is work and activities. And this is a very important set. I mean, they're all important, but this one you have a lot of room for creativity. And this allows you to put in 15 areas to talk about volunteering, hobbies, medicine-related job, employment positions, internships, like student orgs that you're involved in, anything like that. And so it's really important for these to be high quality. You don't necessarily need to fill out all 15 if like your 15th one is going to be fluff, right? Like you want it to like be high quality information that describes who you are, what you're interested in, and why you want to, and like tangentially, like why these experiences make you qualified for medicine. And so, yeah, this is something that takes a lot of keeping track of and trying to curate so you have like a good breadth of experiences. You don't want them all to be research or all to be like one particular student org. You want a good mixture of a lot of different activities, including ones of your personal hobbies to show that you're like a well-balanced person. Yeah, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I think I totally agree with everything you said. I think working with my students, another thing that came up is like there might be multiple activities that were really important to you in college beyond the 3 meaningful activities. And there are so many secondary essays coming your way after you submit your primary. So there are lots of opportunities to talk about other things that were important to you outside of your extracurriculars, outside of your extracurricular section and your personal statement. So there are like a lot of opportunities to get into these activities in your interviews as well.
That's a really good point. Thank you for bringing that up.
And I will also add in here, we do have a full webinar on the work and activities section because it is how you fill it out is really strategic. If any of you have any questions, feel free to pop that in the Q&A box and we'll get to those at the end. But it's a section that you can really leverage and use to your advantage.
For your letters of recommendation, this is also where you can enter in up to 10 letter writers into your application, and you can also select which schools will be receiving different letters. So I would also make sure and check in with those. Different schools have different requirements on how many letters they need and how many need to be from specific people. If you're an MD PhD applicant, there's also a lot of sometimes additional requirements on like you need a PI or some sort of like someone in a scientific capacity to submit them. So make sure you check in with different schools and see what their requirements are and make sure that you're sending the right recommenders to each school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that it's also a delicate balance of, I mean, there's schools that say we accept exactly 4 letters of recommendation that to be from these 4 kinds of people, like a 2 science, non-science, and an extracurricular. Like some places do that, and you know exactly what to give them. I will say, reminder that some places do require a non-science like professor that you've taken a class with. I didn't know that until very last minute and had to do some scrambling, but it ended up being okay. But just putting that on your radar, because I hadn't taken a non-science class in like 2 years. So anyways, and then also some schools just say, give us letters of recommendation and leave it at that. And so I would not recommend like, let's say you hypothetically have 10 letters that you upload. No school wants to read 10 separate letters. I think the max that I personally sent to any school was 6. And I think that was like the max that is like pretty reasonable because at that point they might start to become repetitive and it might look like you're trying to pad your application. But yeah, 5 writers is like letter from someone, if that makes sense.
Yeah, those are amazing points.
Is there a strategy in if you have kind of an open-ended send us letters and like whose recommendations you choose to send for like specific schools based on kind of their ethos and categories?
Oh, okay. Okay, great.
Okay.
Okay, awesome.
Okay, cool. And then, all right, so I guess was there any other points you had about letters of recommendation?
Oh, I think you did an amazing job. I totally agree with everything Callie said. I feel like she hit all of the major points. But yeah, I completely agree. I think showing some variety in science and non-science letters is great. And then I think a lot of the schools that Inspira applicants apply to really value research. So if you've had a couple of years of bench lab experience, I would definitely get a letter from your PI.
For sure. All right, so this section is where for medical schools where you choose which schools are going to receive your application. So this you choose the medical school and like apply to if you're applying MD, MD, PhD, or if there are a very few select number of places have early decision programs. I think that logistically this makes sense, but in terms of like crafting a school list, that's like a whole other topic to get into, and like how many schools to apply to, things like that. Most times people apply to like 30 med schools. I applied to fewer and did that wishing I had applied to more, just like from a numbers game. But you really want to have a variety of schools that you apply to.
Yeah, and another like quick point on choosing medical schools, just from like reflecting back on my time, is that I think like really taking some extra time to consider why you're applying to that school and what you think makes you a good fit for that school is a good idea. There were some schools that, like, looking back, I applied because of location or like school rank or like very arbitrary things, and I wasn't actually a good fit for that school, and I feel like I couldn't really articulate well in my essays why I wanted to go to that school because I didn't have like a good genuine reason to apply. So just when you're choosing your schools, there's a lot of factors that go into it, but also just taking some time to think about what makes me a good fit for this school, what makes this school special to me, and why I think I would fit in also goes a long way, because when you go into your interviews, that's something that you're going to think about again.
That is an excellent point that I feel like often gets very overlooked. So thank you.
Okay, the personal statement. This is something that I feel super passionate about. I think this is one of the most important parts of your application. And I think that this can be one of the most stressful parts of an application. I think it takes like students a lot of time to craft a personal statement. So some things with some overview things about the personal statement that you might be familiar with already is there's a character limit, so you have 5,300 characters for your personal statement, and there's also a few AMCAS things, like the formatting is one thing that comes up a lot. A lot of like students have like things in italics or like other special formatting things when they're like writing their personal statement that doesn't really translate all that well onto AMCAS. So try to make sure that when you write your essay that it's in a plain text format without any bullets or numbers or other kinds of formatting. And also like make sure you do things like make sure that your spelling and grammar are accurate and things like that. But other things to think about in your personal statement is just to, and this might sound like a cliche, but just to like really make sure that it's genuine and that it comes from your heart, and that you take a lot of time to really sit back and think about why medicine is important to you, and try not to write for your audience. So try not to think about the committee that might be reading your letter too much while you're writing it. I think that there are a lot of things that students know to avoid, like don't say that you just want to like take care of people or that you like science. There's other
a good rule of thumb is if there's a sentence in your personal statement that could have been written by anyone, just take it out. Like everything that you write should be specific to you, your interests, why you want to pursue medicine, your backgrounds, things like that. And so if it's just like, oh, my life, I've liked science and helping people or whatever, like anyone could say that. So you can start off writing like that if you want, just to get words on paper to help ease into that. But as you edit, really try to cut it down to the most salient parts.
Yeah, I think that's really amazing advice, Callie. And I think that a lot of students also think that maybe their experiences aren't unique enough, but I think like no one has had the exact experiences that you've had. Like no one's talked to like the same patients, no one's worked on the same exact project. So there is actually a lot more variability than you think in like the specifics of what you've done. So yeah, really trying to think about what important experiences there are to you will help you stand out a lot more than you think.
Mm-hmm. All right. So also the final section of your application, you'll find the MCAT scores have already been linked, unless you are yet awaiting your test scores, you put in the dates for that. And then you then update the fields with your actual results, even if they arrive after you submitted your MCAS application. So you can still submit your application before you get your scores back, but medical schools require them. So it's very important to make sure that they end up there, because people aren't going to review your application until it has an MCAS score associated with it. All right, so some common mistakes to avoid when filling out AMCAS.
Yeah, okay. So some things that you want to make sure you don't do are grammar and spelling mistakes. I would look over it one time, two times, three times, get someone else to look over it too, either your consultant, a friend, anyone, just to make sure that you don't make a silly mistake in somewhere in your application. When you're writing your activity section, try to group related activities together. So for like shadowing experiences, you don't necessarily need to like list each shadowing experience separately. You can just group things like that together. Publications and presentations are often grouped together too, just to save room to write about other things that you might have done in college. Try to avoid listing accomplishments from high school in your experience section too. Try to focus on things that you've done more recently. And also a big one is to make sure that your work and activity section is different from your personal statement. So if you have like a specific activity that for one of your meaningful activities, for example, if you like go into a specific activity and you talk about like a certain experience you had with a patient, repeating that information outright in your personal statement is just a disservice to you. You want to try to maximize the space in your application to dive into all the different aspects of you and why you're such a special person. So try to make sure that all of that stuff is separate.
Yeah, really excellently said. I think that like you don't want redundancy in your application, because you only get so many characters to tell them who you are. And so you want each part of them to be complementary, and they can like, maybe reference something here and there, but don't rehash the same patient experience in your personal statement and in like your work experiences, things like that. And I think like there are very few exceptions to the not listing your high school experiences. I think one could be as if like you're talking about a hobby that you've had for like 10 years, like you can discuss your like longitudinal experiences with that hobby. But again, you really want to like overall, like more recent is better.
Yeah, totally agree.
All right, and then tips for helping your application to stand out. So highlight clinical experience. Really, schools value so much more than your medical knowledge. No one coming into medical school has like a ton of medical knowledge, and they know that. So what you do need to show that you have is like all the soft skills, so to speak. I think that all your soft skills and like a more logistical understanding of knowing what you're getting yourself in for. And so I think that the personal statement is a really great time to put in an anecdote about an experience you had with a patient that was really meaningful to you, and include what it taught you about medicine. Valuable extracurriculars are really important. They can showcase your knowledge of science, throughout your extracurriculars. And like, yes, if you're like the president of your pre-med club, include that, but it doesn't have to just be like president of the pre-med club. It can be anything. Like a lot of the volunteering can be completely not clinically related at all, and that's totally fine. Still include it. And work experience that, where have you worked? Like, for example, I did not include in my application that I waitressed my way through college because I didn't think they would care about that. And looking back, there are actually a lot of similarities between like skills that you need to waitress and skills you need as a physician, and like the sacrifice that it makes to like pay your way through school like that. So that was a mistake I made, thinking that it had to be all super clinically related, when in reality it really wasn't, as long as you can show that it's like related in some capacity. And then reflecting on your experiences, do not list them in bullet points, like in really dry, like I did this A, B, C, D. Should talk about what you learned, talk about how you grew from these, and talk about it, importantly, how this will make you a better physician in the future. You don't need to spend a ton of time on this and within like the work and experiences section, like get at it in a little bit, but especially in the personal statement, that's the time to really have this stand out. All right, so I think that covers everything that we had. I don't know if anyone had any questions in the Q&A, or if Callie, if you had any questions you wanted us to start off with.
Yeah, I think if you have any questions, like you have Ruchi and Callie here to answer them, and they're experts. Actually, we just got a question. So Ruchi, what was your motivation for applying to Yale? And I think Callie could probably also answer this. They both went to Yale. So maybe have both of you talk about that.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, Yale was my top choice when I was applying, and I had kind of like maybe an interesting application cycle. I wasn't sure if I wanted to do MD PhD or not, so I applied to a lot of MD programs, some 5-year MD programs, and also MD PhD programs. And I remember like at the beginning of my application process being like, if I get into like Yale's MD PhD program, I will definitely go. So I was actually like very burnt out at the end of college. I was so tired. I was like working in like 2 research labs at once. Like I really like sat back and like thought about what was important to me in the future, and I realized that I did not want to continue this grind for like the rest of my life. So it was really important for me to go to a med school that emphasized flexibility, that wasn't overly competitive. I like wanted to avoid schools that had like a really like competitive culture and like emphasis on things like AOA and class rank and things like that. So that's what really made Yale stand out to me, is just you'll hear this a lot if you end up applying to Yale, but the Yale system is something that's really emphasized here and talked about a lot. And I think I think what it is in reality is just not a lot of stuff is mandatory. Other schools might have exams every week, but like Yale has exams every like 3 to 4 months. And you can actually, and there's a lot of flexibility on like passing those exams too. There's not a lot of mandatory coursework. So there's a lot of like flexibility at Yale, and it's a lot more chill of a school, I guess, compared to what other med schools might be like across the country. So that was really cool and important to me. And there's also like amazing research opportunities here, amazing faculty members, like some of the best in the entire country, while like not placing that much extrinsic stress. So I think Yale is a really great place to apply if you're someone who has like a lot of intrinsic motivation and you get stressed out really easily. I think like other schools might be a better fit if you like those extrinsic factors, like if having like more regular testing schedules and stuff like that like helps you keep yourself on track. So yeah, just checking in with yourself and seeing what kind of student you are.
Yeah, I think you summed up the Yale system wonderfully. And I similarly applied to and eventually attended Yale for very similar reasons. I think so yes, to the whole Yale system and the flexibility and the huge load that takes off your shoulders of not being in a pressure cooker during medical school. I think also there's a lot of flexibility and also with with research. Like I'm not MD PhD, but research is very important to me, and I took a 5th year an extra research year, which is incredibly common here and like fully funded and well supported. And so that's something that was like a good fit for like the level that I want research to be part of my career. And so that was something else that was a very, very it like drew me to Yale.
It was also the New Haven pizza for both of you, I'm sure, too.
Of course. Sadly, I'm gluten-free, so not many options.
Oh,
Oh, no. All right. Well, thank you both for answering that. It's great to hear what your motivations were there, and I'm sure will be helpful for viewers as well. Do either of you have any like very specific memories of filling out your AMCAS application and things that you wish you had known about earlier or would go back and change now and do differently?
Give yourself a lot of time to do this because it takes a lot of time to have a very well-crafted application. And also it takes a lot of time, like logistically, just to put everything into the system. And so I think that that's something where I to where you feel like prepared to submit it when you do. It does not have to be on the very first day that you can submit, although it should be as close to that as you possibly can without sacrificing the quality of your application.
Yeah, I totally just kind of going along the lines of what Callie said earlier is just I think a lot of students think that you really need to like be a doctor already and that you need to have like these specific accomplishments and this many like research hours, this many clinical hours. And I think like even as a med student, I feel like I don't have like all the clinical knowledge and medical knowledge that I need to have. And what they're really looking for is just who you are as a person and are you like genuinely motivated and excited to learn about medicine? And I think that they're really like looking out for your best interests because med school is really hard and very long, and being in the process to being an attending is also like very can be very challenging in a lot of different ways, and they just want to see, does this person have, did they set themselves up to have the work habits to study in med school? Do they like working with patients so they'll be excited and motivated to do this during med school and during residency? So they're really just looking at who you are as a person, and I really think that looking back now, I think that the schools that rejected me, I honestly was not a good fit for. And I think that, and also going along with Callie, there were like other things that I wish I highlighted that just like emphasized who I was as a person, because I think that is what they're looking for.
Well said.
Awesome. Another question we have is, what is the timing of the Casper test? If you're applying a year from now, when should you be taking that?
So I did take the Casper test for my application cycle. There are I didn't realize this at the time. There are only like certain dates that you can take the Casper test and certain like times. But otherwise they're open pretty free. I think they have like multiple testing dates like per month. I think if you're a year out from your application, you probably don't need to worry about that right now. I would maybe take it a little bit closer to when you're applying. But just take a look at those, because I actually at when I was applying thought that you could take the Casper test at any time because you just take it at your like laptop any want to. You don't have to go to a testing center. So there are certain dates that you have to take, but I would probably take it like closer to when you're filling out your AMCAS next year. Oh, sorry, I think you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Yep. Is there a time frame? Does it take time to send the scores to AMCAS, or is that pretty immediate? Do you need to build in like a buffer time from like between taking it and sending in your application?
For the MCAT?
for Casper.
Oh, sorry, Casper. Sorry, the Casper didn't exist when I applied to med school, so I'm
No
like
worries.
slightly more rusty on that front.
I don't completely remember how many weeks you need for the Casper, just because it only applied when I was applying to like maybe 2 of the like 30 schools that I applied to. I think it's somewhere along the lines of like 2-ish weeks, but that could also be like misinformation. I'm not totally sure. I think that they like list on the site how long it takes, but I would just make sure you take a look at that and try to build that into your timeline.
Awesome. So take it close to your application, but with enough time to make sure all the stores have time to be sent. All right, we'll leave this open for another minute or two if anyone has any additional questions. But I want to say thank you to Callie and Ruchi for being here today. It was fantastic to have you both walk through this. And for anyone who has like specific questions on a lot of the sections that we covered, we do have webinars that cover a lot of those, specifically personal statement, work and activities, letters of recommendation. So feel free to refer to those on our website for free as well, to get like a full webinar length coverage on that topic. All right, well, keep an eye out in your email for a recording of this webinar. We'll be sending it in the next day or two. And thanks to everyone who joined us today. It was great to have you all with us.
Thank you so much, everyone, for coming.
Great. Congratulations again, Callie. And Ruchi, it was great to meet you.
Yeah, you too.